Hey, this is Dr. Barry. This video is very, very important. Did you realize that there are millions of people walking around in the United States right now with undiagnosed type 2 diabetes? This can range anywhere from 10-year-old children to 90-year-old adults. Unless you've had the correct lab work checked, you actually have no idea whether you're diabetic or not. So if you know someone who you're unsure about their blood sugar, you're worried about their health, you want to keep them healthy and keep them around, then please share this video. Share it on your Facebook page, share it in your groups. Send an email, send a text message, but get this message out to help me help undiagnosed diabetics before it's too late. Now, let's talk about this. Is it possible that you could be an undiagnosed type 2 diabetic? Why, yes, it is. And here's how. So many people go to the doctor once a year and they get checked out. He'll use his stethoscopes, he'll poke on you a little bit, and then he'll check some lab work. And you're not a doctor. You don't know which lab work he checks, right? And so you get a call a week later from their office saying, hey, all your lab work's fine. We'll see you next year. So that's very reassuring, right? You have a false hope, a blind trust that, oh, okay, they checked everything and everything's okay. That's not the case. If they checked everything in the LabCorp or the Quest lab manual, that would cost about $25 million. So doctors don't check everything, okay? What we mean by that is we checked everything that's relevant in our professional opinion to your personal case. That's what that means when your doctor says, I checked everything and everything's okay. That doesn't mean he checked everything. It just means he checked everything that in his professional opinion applies to you. And in my opinion, oftentimes that's just not enough lab work. And here's why. So you go in for your annual exam, and we described that already, and he draws some blood work and checks some urine. So they'll check your urinalysis. If your blood sugar is under 180, there won't be any sugar in your urine. Okay. So your blood sugar could literally be 179 that morning, and there will be no glucose in your urine. So he's blind. He can't see that. Okay. Now he checks a complete blood panel, which is good, but that's a very cursory test. That checks nothing about diabetes whatsoever. Most doctors check a basic metabolic panel. Now that has a fasting blood sugar in it, and we'll get back to that in a second. But it does not check your liver at all. It only checks your kidneys and a few electrolytes and a fasting blood sugar. Of course, he's going to check that lipid panel because he's very concerned about your total cholesterol and your LDL, even though those probably don't matter. And he'll check your urinalysis. Now, for most doctors, that's it. And here's why. Your insurance will pay for that annual checkup and the annual blood work, but it doesn't pay for a lot of blood work for your annual exam. And so if your doctor codes it that way, then it'll get kicked out by the insurance company if he checks a lot of extra testing. He has to add diagnoses or symptoms to your the form he submits to the insurance company, or you'll get a bill for your labs and you'll be calling the doctor's office pissed off because you got to pay for this labs and it's supposed to be covered 100% on your annual physical. So doctors are very reluctant to check extra stuff. They're afraid insurance won't cover it, and then you'll be upset. You need to let your doctor know right up front, hey, I want to know, I want these extra things checked. I would recommend you go in with a list of lab work that you'd like checked. This is your one life and your one body. And if something gets missed, it's you that will suffer. It's your family that'll suffer. And so don't let that happen. So back to the BMP that has the fasting blood sugar in it. You can have severe type 2 diabetes and have a normal fasting blood sugar. Let me say that again. You can have right now severe uncontrolled type 2 diabetes, have no idea, not really have enough symptoms. You've just got used to the symptoms. You drink more water, you pee more, you just think that's who you are. You don't worry about that. But you've got type 2 diabetes. You just don't know it. Or you've got prediabetes and you just don't know it, right? Both of those things are very dangerous, and I'm going to tell you why at the end of this video. So if he just checks a basic metabolic panel, he has no idea. If you're a type 2 diabetic, a pre-diabetic, if you have insulin resistance, he has no idea about those things. He's blind to that because he didn't check the needed lab work. Got it? So here's what you're going to do. And this video is just about pre-diabetes and diabetes. There are other things that can be missed by checking just this limited labs, and I'll talk about that in future videos. You absolutely need to demand at least a once a year A1C. hemoglobin A1C. So it could be abbreviated A1C or HbA1c. And if you have to pay cash for this lab, it's 30, 40 bucks. I promise you it's worth that, okay? So tell your doctor, hey, make sure and check an A1C, because if your A1C is even 1/10 of a point high, and the cutoff values vary from lab to lab, so I can't really tell you a numbers, but I'm just going to tell you, when you look at your lab results, which you're always going to request, right? Right, always. You're always going to get a copy of your own labs. Doctors are busy. Sometimes some doctors, even though it's malpractice, they let their nurses interpret the labs because they're too busy. Okay, so you're going to ask for that A1C, and if he says, "Oh, I don't think your insurance will cover that, and you don't need it," say, "That's fine, doctor. I've got my checkbook. I'll be happy to pay for that, because I want to know if I'm pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic, because Dr. Berry said that's really important to know." All right. You're also going to get a glucometer, and you're going to have that at home, and you're going to use that. And about 90 minutes to 120 minutes after a meal, you're going to check your blood sugar. And if that number's ever above 140, you're pre-diabetic. Okay. It doesn't matter what you ate. If you ate a dozen donuts and drank a quart of milk, your blood sugar 2 hours after that meal should be under 140 if your insulin and glucose metabolism are still functioning properly. Never, please never do that, but I'm just saying. So if you ever catch a blood sugar at home 2 hours after a meal that's above 140, you're pre-diabetic. You need to go see your doctor immediately, okay? And so when you get your A1C back, when the doctor calls you and says, "Oh, we checked everything and everything's fine," you're going to say, "Oh, great, give me a copy of that," okay? Because very often doctors will see a blood sugar of 102 or 105, and they'll say, "Oh, it's a little high. It's not that big a deal. Well, it's fine. We'll check it next year." No, no, ma'am. No, sir. That's not okay. That's not fine. And I'm about to tell you why. If your A1C is 1/10 of a point high, you're pre-diabetic. Don't let your doctor say, "Oh, it's a little high. It's not a big deal." No, that's bullcrap. You are a pre-diabetic. That is important. And here's why. There are two studies. One was done recently by my alma mater in Memphis, Tennessee, at the VA Medical Center, where they proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that the damage from prediabetes and type 2 diabetes starts years before the diagnosis is made. Okay. And so for 2 or 3 years, your A1C was 1/10 of a point high, 2/10 of a point high, and your doctor's like, "Well, that's probably fine. Just cut back on the saturated fat, and I'll see you next year, and we'll see how it is." Then damage is being done that entire year to all the tiny blood vessels in your eyes, in your brain, in your heart, in your kidneys, in your penis. All those things have to have a good blood supply to function properly, okay? And for the first 5 or 10 years that you have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, everything will still work pretty good, and it can be very falsely misleading that you're pretty healthy, even though the damage is being done. There's some degree of redundancy in your blood vessels, and so you can lose a few, and you can't really tell the difference. But after a certain amount, the damage is done. You can't take that back, okay? So if your A1C is even 1/10 of a point high, boom, you have a diagnosis. You have pre-diabetes, and then everything I say on all my other videos on this channel becomes much more important to you, because as I said, the two studies show without doubt damage is being done when your blood sugar is just a few points high, when your A1C is just 1/10 of a point high. Your end organs, all those organs I talked about, are being damaged, and not all that damage can be taken back even if you start eating properly. So if you enjoyed this video and you learned something from it, please consider clicking on the subscribe button. It's right down there underneath the screen. And there's a little bell button beside it. If you'll click that, you'll get a notification every time I get a bright idea. If you'd like to help me make more videos like this in the future, because I can promise you I'll never be sponsored by Big Pharma, Big Food, or Big Medicine, you can click on the Patreon link down below. It's a quick sign up, and you can throw a buck or two my way to help me have more time to make more videos just like this. This is Dr. Berry. I'll see you next time.